is Natalie Clark and I'm a wool area manager in the Eyre Peninsula region of South Australia. I work under Adrian Jewell. I have 6,000 bales on my account list at the moment. I travel across towards the WA border to Kuraby, is probably my furthest point west. It's about 350 kilometres off the WA border. And I've travelled the other way across towards Port Augusta, about 150 kilometres before Port Augusta is an area around Kimber and Buckleboo, and then down to Port Lincoln, so it's a triangular area that I cover off the EP. So a typical day for me is grabbing my latest reports and looking over my diary, checking emails before I hit the road, and then basically set off fairly early to try and get to my first shed before the first run, or just up on the first run, so I can actually have time to visit 3 or 4 people in the day. And in my peak time I'm trying to squeeze in 5 or 6 people, so it gets a bit pushed for time with the kilometres that I travel. In the winter months is our main shearing time, so after seeding, which is generally through June, people start talking about shearing sheep then. So I go from basically the end of June right through to early October is my busy time, so everybody shears within that time frame of the year, and then after shearing then everyone starts harvesting. So that is basically the window of opportunity to fit in around all their other businesses that are going on. So it's a pretty intense area of time because it's quite compacted. And then other times of the year, like now, the first week back to school after the new year, so there's a lot of crutching and shearing lambs this time of year, and it's also my chance to go and do other areas like attending clearing sales with branch managers, or crop walks, or any information days that they might be having. It's my chance to mingle and meet other farmers that aren't on our landmark list. I generally plan my week out by sending out every contact that I have in Landmark in the EP, so branch managers, stockies, admin, merch people, insurance, whoever is quite willing to communicate with me, I put them on my list and I send out an email stating my Monday to Friday plan, who I'm planning to visit, and then underneath that I usually mention if I'm doing a crop inspection walk or if I'm going to a clearing sale, and I also mention if I hear of other people shearing or any other activity that someone might be interested in. I work closely with insurance over this way, and we often keep communicating with each other about what's happening in different areas. Our stockies are really good as well. We often talk about non-clients, what activities they're up to, and I'll often mention if there's weaners being shorn because they're looking at selling them in a month's time. I'll contact the stocky that's in the area and hopefully they can get a chance to get their foot in the door as well. For me, I've only been in my role for 2.5 years, so I've had to really draw on other people in other businesses. So for example, Tumby Bay Insurance. Tumby Bay now also have a stocky, and so the 3 of us work quite closely together with group emails relating what their activities are and what mine are, and then we also try and commit half a day with 2 or 3 of us to travel around together and just be a familiar person to meet a new client, so it's not basically doing a cold canvas call. So my approach for trying to attract new business with our wool non-clients is to, first of all, I attend when they're shearing. I usually get the heads up from a shearer that I've built a relationship with, who will send me through a text message or a phone call to say we're shearing here today and this is his name, and he's mentioned he might be open to another wool broker coming in, or they just say that they're shearing and that I should come in and break the ice. So what I often do is I turn up, I don't let them know I'm coming, I bring out the latest market reports, and I might bring a contamination box or a singlet or some pens, whatever I might have at the time, and I basically walk into the shed and I acknowledge everyone and say hello. I try and work out who the boss man is straight away and walk up to them and shake their hand and say, I'm Natalie, I'm now locally based. Landmark has placed someone here on the Eyre Peninsula permanently now, and I'm here to service the area as my local business. Wall table, having a chat to the classer or the owner classer, and just explain to them what the wool market's doing, have a look at their bins, and often they'll start asking you questions, and that's your opportunity to say, oh well, if I was classing this shed I'd be pulling this out because this is worth this much at the moment and this main line is worth this much at the moment, so you're downgrading. Try to add a bit of value, a bit of knowledge, and then from there I leave it at that, and I tend to walk down to the shearers and acknowledge all of those guys working and perhaps whoever's pushing up sheep and just say hello. And I keep it fairly short and sweet. I might be there half an hour, 40 minutes, and after that I'll hop in the car, and then I'll follow that up often with a visit at crutching time, and crutching time or at a clearing sale I'll try and remember who they are and go up and say hello. I'm just trying to start being a familiar face in the area, and hopefully that will open up a door from there. So when I find I'm in an area and I have a couple of hours to kill because perhaps wet sheep, the shearing isn't starting for another run, I find that a good opportunity to print out some reports out of the branch that I'm closest to. Often I've got spare ones in the car anyway, and I will head around and I'll do a circuit that I know I've got a couple of hours of 5 or 6 regular clients, and I want to be a familiar face and keep in touch with them every 2 to 3 months. That's my little target or goal. So yesterday, for example, people had wet sheep and weren't starting until 10:30, and I wanted to go back and see the ewe line of wool, so I didn't want to take off. So instead I used that time to visit 5 or 6 people, and knowing full well that the majority of them wouldn't be home and they'd be out spraying. But it's about showing a presence and keeping familiar and letting them realise that you're thinking about them even if you're not physically seeing them. So I went around, knocked on the door. Sometimes you get the wives at home and I'll have a quick chat to them and give them a report. Often no one's home and I'll just leave it at the door with my card. And then I often get phone calls back saying, oh, thanks for dropping that off, sorry I missed you. I also get farmers now contacting me saying, oh, I actually had to do some unplanned shearing because of fly, or we're selling some cull ewes. So now I've got 3 bales of wool, what do you recommend I do with this? So at the moment, shearing has been quiet over recess and the first couple of weeks into January, which is pretty normal because all the farmers head off and go fishing. And then I've noticed the last 2 to 3 weeks back, where everyone's starting to get back into shearing and crutching, that I'm getting a lot of feedback from the farmers that they don't understand why their weaners aren't growing the way they should be, considering all the fresh green food that we've had around and all the rain, and it's expected that it should be the better season. They've also mentioned that they're quite messy, or they've got the squirts, and that's an indication of worms. It can be an indication of other things, but generally worms. So this area that I'm talking about is generally drier and hotter this time of year, but unseasonally we're having a lot of summer rains and a lot of humidity, and we've got a lot of green tucker around, which is definitely out of the norm. So I've asked Daniel Schupen to ring a couple of the clients and talk to them, and I've also quickly talked to Daniel, and we sort of chatted that it could be a few things, but basically we thought it was down to worms, and that these farmers probably don't treat for worms regularly because they don't often have issues with them because it's so dry. So those farmers that don't treat their sheep every year have been caught out this year. So that's been a good opportunity for me in the next couple of weeks to start walking in the door and mentioning, or how do you find your weaners are performing this year? And 9 times out of 10 everyone's been saying, oh, not as well as I thought. And then I mention, have they got the squirts? And they often mention, yes, they are a bit messier than normal. And then I've I just state that in this area from Penong through to Woodner, I'm finding that a lot of people are mentioning they're having issues with worms. And then I asked them if they wanted to talk to Daniel, who's our guru, or to contact the branch and let them know that what your issues you're having, and they can steer you in the right direction of what products to use. To be honest, I don't know much about the brands or what's out there, so it's just a way of me trying to add value and add service and also do a bit of companion selling, and I steer them in the right direction of someone who knows what they're talking about in that area. And then I will follow that up with contacting that branch or sending through a text message to Daniel just saying, this grower has mentioned that he wants to talk to you about this. If you don't hear from him, perhaps give him a call in a day.